All right. Well, welcome back to Tuesdays in the Boardroom, where we're mapping transitions that engage your talents, purpose, and allies. Um, and this transition, as a reminder, is your three-step psychological reorientation to change. The change that has happened is a change from one form of employment or engagement in activities to another, to one that you'd like to have in the future. So understanding that change happens with or without your permission, with or without your alignment. Transition allows you to align to it. So, as we've said before, and I'm going to reiterate, when we're in the wilderness and we're looking for a job, we're looking for the job, like that's the point. But we're actually being given a path to follow. There will be multiple options. There may be two jobs. There may be a volunteer. There may be a for-pay two jobs. It may be a consulting. It could be many things, including that W-2 with benefits. But that's not even the point. The point is this path that you're on, that you've been given, and you can leverage the sanctuary of having God with you to go through this path and continue on this path. And on this path, you're not alone. You have your allies, your colleagues that can help you connect to many of the options that will be on your path. And we just want to keep that so in front of you, because as much as we this week are going to be talking about the questions that we can ask and the questions that we need to be able to answer during an interview, to understand that through this whole process and this whole path, being able to collaborate with people in the conversation is what we're preparing for. Most of us have this idea when you say the word interview. First of all, you see yourself in an office where you're sitting in the supplicant chair, where the person who's wanting to hire you is on another chair. There's a desk between you and probably a computer, and you're asking questions. That's the vision we have when we hear the word interviewing. I'm going to ask you to stop that because that's changed so radically that it's not exactly what it's going to even look like when you get to the interview. Because today, no, Leslie has left, but Leslie's husband transitioned from working from Carter's and now works at Cox. He never even, in fact, he in January will go in and actually see people for the first time. So in the pandemic, it will not be unusual. It will be most likely that this interview is going to be on a computer screen, just like the one we're on today. So this is what you're prepping for. So as you look at your background behind you, as you think about what you're wearing, as you think about the person on the other end and what they're doing, this is what you're preparing for. So I want y'all to visually reorient yourself to this is how the job interview is going to look. And when you can make sure that you know that you've got your colleagues with you, and they probably are the ones that you're going to interview with first. We've introduced an unusual path. It is the most effective path. It's the path that people who have been doing this outplacement and onboarding for decades recommend, which is networking. So here on the path are your mentors, colleagues, and other connections. They're the ones that you need to prepare to interview with, so that when you go to have that coffee or that lunch or that Zoom cocktail, whatever it is that you've arranged to connect with these people, you need to be prepared to interview them to find out what kind of connections they may have. And you need to be able to have them interview you so that the two of you can come up with a vision of how they might help you connect with people in their organization or in their old-fashioned Rolodex or in their LinkedIn. So preparing for that interview and understanding that interviewing is a dance between two people, These are the people you're going to be talking with first, who are going to help get you into that office, which again is not going to be the office that I described earlier. It's going to be on the computer, 98% sure. If not, you're wearing a mask in that old office, but this is where, and you're going to talk to not just one person. Even before COVID, the average number of conversations that people were having had tripled before they get the job. They're having to talk to at least 3 to 6 people before they even get to the decision maker to be able to get the job. So prepare yourself for more conversations, which is why we make sure that you do the Catalyst and the workplace, is so that you know how to talk to multiple people. Because each of the mentors, colleagues, big sisters, connectors, etc., they're different styles. So when you interview, you need to be able to tell your story in 4 languages. You need to tell it in the D, the I, the S, and the C. Because you are going to be speaking with a D, an I, an S, or a C 10 to 1 in your interview process. You may have a terrific connection with somebody on a Zoom coffee in the morning, and your styles just connect, and you talk and they ask questions and you answer, and it feels great. Then you go to the next colleague that they've introduced you to, and they're a totally different style from you. And they're going to be asking the same questions, and you're going to be asking the same questions, but you've got to now use a different language. You may need to know that 32% of the transactions that you did in your last job were successful or unsuccessful. And if you don't have that data because you haven't gotten it from your previous employer or whatever, make some kind of estimate in your head. So if you're speaking to the C, they understand that you've thought about the quantifiable aspects. It's not what you think about. You may not be a C, but you've got to be able to speak C in this process. And you may not be the get it done type. We want to warm up that relationship. But if you can say, here are the results that I was able to achieve in my last job. Here are the results I'd like to help you achieve. What kind of results do you want to achieve that I might be able to help you with? These are all questions, but you need to be able to translate it into 4 styles. So being you is important, but also speaking 4 languages and that being part of you is very important. So once you've found someone that you know is going to be one of your connectors, whether you have seen a job that's been posted and you've gotten the name of the person and that person is the person that you're supposed to contact, or it's one of your neighbors or one of your best friend's sisters. This is your ally in landing the job. How do you really connect with them so that you're asking questions and they're hearing answers and vice versa in the interview with this person? And it's more difficult because they are at home listening to their child in the kitchen while they're talking to you about the job that you're wanting to get. So this is the world that you're talking into. Is this person who truly wants to help you, but she's got a kid at home because of COVID. So being aware that your activity, your engagement, and your leadership of this is very important. As I said earlier, and this is where I'm going to start inviting Shonda to jump in because Shonda has an excellent background. Both of us have backgrounds in this process, but interviewing is a dance. It's not a ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong. Like, here's how many years I did this. What did you do? That's a ping pong match. This is more of a dance with the person. So you're going to need to touch, emotionally touch them. You're going to need to have conversation that you're building. It's not just a, here's the question, here's the answer, ping pong. It's more of a, let me really ask questions of you as much as you're asking questions of me. So knowing the right questions is just as important as knowing the right answers. You can get all the right answers. Google, they'll tell you the top 5. We'll be sharing them with you later. But what are the questions you want to ask? Knowing what they need. Now that's more discoverable than ever before. It used to be if you're going to go do an interview at Coca-Cola, it would be a lot of work to go to the library, to do research, to find out what their sales are. Now, are the sales up or down in Atlanta versus, Singapore? Today, it's at your fingertips. It's in your phone. Figuring out what they need globally, what do they need departmentally, what does the boss need, and what does this role need? Being able to figure out as much as possible so that you can ask questions. Oh, I was thinking in Atlanta, you actually had things going on that were exciting. Well, there are things that haven't been published yet, but this is what's going on. When you have that new information, you can parlay that piece of information into, oh, wow, that data's less than I thought. And my last job, we ran up against that same kind of issue. And here's what we did. So it activates a story. So being prepared to dance, not just to do a solo performance and then they do a solo performance. It's a dance. So Shonda, let's start talking about questions. What are the 5 to 10 relevant questions people should be kind of getting prepared for? And again, this is not negotiations. We're going to talk about that later. Sometimes in the interview, you do get into some of the negotiation points, but if in your mind you can keep the interview in a dance place, not a negotiation, because a lot of times we lock up in this conversation because we feel like we're negotiating for the job. We're not. We're interviewing, and they're being interviewed and we're being interviewed. But what are your thoughts in regards to the 5 questions, 5 to 10
Yeah,
questions?
I think as someone who's just been on the other side, listening, the applicants that are asking the ones directly from Google, they clearly haven't really spent time investigating our personal situation. Like what exactly is going on at in our specific company. And so any question that really proves that you're personalizing it, right? That you're not just asking the same question, one size fits all, but you're really saying, well, here specifically, this is what my whether it's, my cousin worked here or I had an experience with your product, whatever it is that you can personalize with your experience with their company, and then adding to that a question that really shows a direct connection. It's not just I'm going to ask you a question because the spotlight's on me now to ask a question, but really trying to gather data. Think of yourself as that detective that's really trying to get the inside scoop of why do they need this specific role right now? Like, is there a story behind this? There always is. There always is. So trying to find from that interviewer, am I replacing someone or is this a new role that's being created right now? What's the history of this role? And really asking specifics of that company, not that you would ask of every single company. So that's really where I think that sets you aside, and makes you stand out more, is that personalization process of the question.
Excellent, excellent. This is something we started talking about yesterday. If you can walk around from being the applicant to their chair and think about them, what are they going to be curious about? What's motivating them? Shonda was describing a process where everybody, and this is I believe, very typical of most employers today, they desperately need to hire people and they're worn out with the job seekers that have come, and they're worn out with the process, etc. And so as they go through the process of trying to find talent, they have to decide what's on their go no go list. So like, what were some of the go no goes that you had at your last 5-star resort location that you were hiring for?
I mean, this is very personal, right? So this was our team and what we needed, and we were very honest about it. But maybe it helps to give some insight to others, that this could be happening on the other side of the table where you're going as well, or on the other side of the camera with Zoom. Is that we were looking for this position for over 9 months, and we knew exactly the criteria that we were looking for. We simply were not receiving the applicants that ticked those boxes, and so it was really specific for us and very frustrating because we were doing the job of 3 people the two of us, like each one of us. And it was extremely exhausting. So our need for speed in seeing that this person was there, we had to come up with these no-goes. Okay. That was just to help us because we realized we'd spent way too much time searching and it was not leading to it wasn't for it was the fruition was not coming. It was not in play. So the first thing was we wanted to make sure that the person that was talking to us it was not completely about a brag fest. If all they did was talk about how awesome and great and fantastic and fabulous and wonderful and amazing they were, then we knew they really weren't stopping to think, to be reflective, to be of support or service to the company. And there's really something about that's critical. We needed a servant leader. We need someone who would be willing to serve as they led. And we did not need someone who was like, it's all about me. I'm so great. I'm so wonderful. So this that was our little code word was like, you just write it down on the paper, brag fest. And that does not mean we don't want people to say that what they're good at. Absolutely. It's important. It's imperative to have a sense of recognition of what you bring to the table. That's absolutely critical. But if the whole entire interview process, question after question, they never once said, and we as a team learned this, or I learned so much from working with my previous boss because he or she taught me this. If there was no teaching moment that was expressed in a period of an hour in the interview, we knew this was going to be all about them and ego and not about the team and the service that we needed. So I hope that story has an impact because that was a no-go for us if we could see that it was just all about them. And sometimes it's nerves. I will be honest with you. Some people just get nervous and they don't realize that they're doing that. And I did this and I did that. And they're just spouting off this list. But ultimately, if you've gone that long and you still haven't thought about how you're connected to someone else in your life, whether it's God or your whoever, there has to be some mention of somebody else in the room other than yourself in our book. And the second one was the negative Nellies. So we all are feeling stressed. We were all being pushed to the max. We were all had our reasons for not feeling good about things. But in that 1 hour of life where we share that space together and we try to get to know our applicants, if all they did was complain about what went wrong and how this didn't work and about the environment or we knew they weren't going to be able to be a problem solver. They were going to just highlight more problems. This for us was a no go because we were trying to make miracles happen every day and get more work done than I don't even know how it was possible. But yes, we needed somebody who would join us shoulder to shoulder and try to yeah, not think about all that looming ahead. We know it's daunting, it's scary, there's a lot, but we needed somebody who could help us go, and I could do this. And maybe you guys do this, I'll do this, right? Be able to see the vision, the path with some sense of confidence that was believable, not overdone, but somebody who could actually say, well, what if you did this? I've seen this done before, or yeah, looking for those solutions instead of focusing on all the multiple problems that were at play. That was our second no go, and the third one was we were looking for people that had motivation, they had a drive, like they had a real need to bring forth their um their A game. And that had to show from the moment they walked in the room. If it was just like, oh, this is so pretty here, or comments that were all that's very nice, like for a second. But if there was really no clarity that they realized that time was money, then we felt like, oh dear, they're not going to fit in here. That just wasn't a good match. So having that drive or showing that you're motivated to jump in, to get it done, to fix it, to solve it, whatever it is, in any way that you can convey that clear motivation piece. I think that was a major um, point of go versus no go.
Basically, what organizations, just like what she was describing, this is how it is. People have flattened organizations. There's not the depth to the organization, it's flat. So operations are having to do their own interviewing. HR has been pushed to the side in many ways. You may have an HR, but you're going to be interviewing with actual operations, which means they've got jobs that they already are supposed to be doing, and talking to you takes them away from the job that they should be doing. So being aware for them that they really do need help. And so they're looking quickly to say, is this person in or out? And being able to be the person to say, and I want this job. Now, there are a lot of things that you don't know that you're going to need to negotiate. And we're going to talk about that next week, negotiations. But ultimately, in your head, if you can think to yourself, if they meet my salary requirement, if it's the right time frame, if it's the right location, if it's the right whatever, then yes, I want this job. And sometimes we hold back from saying I want this job because all of these criteria haven't been solved yet. So if you can think to yourself, if I get all these things, then this looks really great and I want the job, and I'll look at the person and go, you know what, I want this job, because people interviewing want you to want the job. And somewhere along the way, we thought that maybe being a savvy negotiator, we're not going to let them know that we want this job. We don't want, because then they may not pay us what we're worth. So there's a lot of stuff going on in our heads. If we can purely let them know, we want this job and put me in, coach. You know that old fashioned song, put me in, coach, I'm ready to play. That's what they want to hear. And sometimes we think, oh, well, I'm going to be savvy and hard to get. And I'm going to tell them, and you end up shooting yourself in the foot. You can be equally enthusiastic about, I want this job. And then when you get to negotiating, if they are not willing to get close to your thing, you go, I am so disappointed. I was so ready to walk in and get going Monday. That we've got a gap here that just doesn't seem to be resolvable. So you're not presenting anything inauthentic when you say to them, I want this job. There are so many people, professionals have told me, applicants don't even ask for the job anymore. They just want to know what the vacation days are. Now, some of that's from the younger group. I know this group is not from that group, but I'm just letting you know that we do some of the same things when we sit back. Or we don't say, I want this job. It feels like a weakening of our position to say we want it. You can even put the caveats in. I really believe that this job is exactly where my skills can come in. And if we are able to come together on the logistics, I'm ready to start Monday. But that it doesn't have to be cheerleader, but it does need to be intent. People have to feel that you are in fact ready to go, and not just, because Shonda literally worked at the number one employer in our area. So everyone wanted to work there. And you walk in and it's gorgeous and everybody can see them. Oh man, this would be a great place to work. Right. But even if you're coming in and everybody wants to work there, if you can show them that the reason you want to work there is you want to help solve their problems, not just because it would look good on you. I'd look good right here. This would be a great place to
Right.
work. Right. All right. So figuring out what is their go, no go. And you figure that out because you talk to your friend who referred you in and they go, listen, what's really happening is they've got this woman who's driving everybody crazy. And she's doing it because she's bossing everybody around. And you have that piece of information, you know that somebody who's going to be able to come in and balance this woman is probably go, no go. If you're too much of a doormat, you're not going to get hired because you got this intel from your research. So come up from their chair, what would be a go, no go for them? So here are the 5 most common interview questions. Tell me about yourself. It's not really a question, but it's an entree into a conversation. Why are you interested in this job? This seems very like rote, but look at it. Why? Why are you interested in this job? So you have to know you needs to be defined in that. The job needs to be defined in it. What would you say were your greatest strengths? So y'all have done the assessment. You've got the disc. You can do the strength finders online. You can do all kinds of things and be able to come up with great statements of what you bring to the table, regardless of what your resume shows. Every single time I'm able to build enthusiasm in the room. Every single time I make sure the cross the T, dot the I happens. What do you think are your biggest weaknesses? Well, here's what I find when I'm on a team, I really need to lean into the strengths of the cross the T, dot the I personality, because I'm able to build that enthusiasm in the room. And I'm willing now, I've learned through my career that I have to be able to read the spreadsheets, but you don't want me doing them. And being able to make a little bit of fun of yourself. Nobody interviewing believes. There is a problem that a lot of interviewing today, because of job descriptions, they seem to believe the person should be a DCIS, right? They need to be able to do both. So being able to say what I know that I do well is bring a team together so that all of these functions are happening. So being able to say, yes, this may be a weakness, but obviously that's going to be in every case. There are other things that you can come up with. These you need to have answers for. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? We're getting ready to do a mapping workshop for 2021. This is probably the most challenging time in history for people to make a map or figure out what we're going to do in 2021, much less 2026. But that's what they're asking you, the question, where are you going to be in 5 years? So have an answer. Well, right now, I'm looking to develop this part. I've moved into an era where all of my work experience has me be such a valuable mentor to emerging leaders. And since we have a huge population of emerging leaders and not as many people in there to help mentor them, this particular job, I see me really working in the mentor position and also, developing new skill sets with teams. I think in about 5 years, where I'm really going to be useful is helping them move into that new level. So in 5 to 6 years, I see myself really working with a leadership group that's helping the next generation, coming up with this 5-year plan. And if you can look and see where the role goes in 5 years, that's probably somewhere around the senior vice president level, or it's the first level management, whatever it is. These are the 5 best questions to ask. What do you expect from a team member or an employee in this position? Finding out what their expectation is. They've got the job description, but what's the expectation? Because a lot of times it's not in the job description. Job description that they put out there is what they've looked up online too, and they've just thrown a bunch of words. And sometimes it fits actually what they're looking for, and sometimes not at all. So being able to talk about expectation is very important. Will those expectations change over time? The answer is almost always yes, but how is it going to change over time? So over the next 6 months, over the next 6 years, how do you see this role changing? What's a typical day like at the company? As you know, it's all changed. So find out, do they have you booked on Zoom calls from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m.? Is it just a series of Zoom calls? Do they expect there to be is there a cadence of every week we have this kind of call or not? Is it catch as catch can? We have conversations. Are they using Slack? How are they communicating? So about how many hours a week would you say I'm going to be on Slack? Or how many hours do you think I'm going to be on Zoom? Are you not using Zoom? Are we going to be on the phone? Just get them to help you see, where do you see the company in 5 years? That's a very good question. And all 5 of these people that you talk to, the D will tell you one thing, the I will tell you another, the S will tell you another, and the C will tell you the other. I mean, you're going to hear different answers to this same question because they haven't really prepped themselves for it, a lot of them. Some of them know it immediately, but this is a very good, because if you've got your 5-year plan and they've got their 5-year plan, suddenly we're finding how you can work together for 5 years. What are the next steps in the interview process? Because we leave it kind of this pregnant place of, well, what do we do now? So helping them help you by saying, okay, well, you're going to need to talk to George, or you need to talk to Betty, or let me get your resume to HR, or find out what the next steps are. How do I choose the best topics to ask the hiring manager? A lot of times you're going through this whole group of people before you actually get to the person who's going to make a yes or no, go or no go decision. Asking the people along the way, how do I choose from all of our conversations the best questions, the best topics to bring up with the hiring manager? So those are the 5 best questions to ask. We want you to really understand these are generic. Go out and find specific. We will tell you that the number one thing that companies are looking for today is agility. Agility, which means the capacity to maneuver and problem solve. So you building examples of your own agility is going to be important to answer from an interview, and also asking about how much agility there's expected. Wiley Publishing, down here at the bottom, is defined as an ed tech provider, which is education technology provider. They provide technology, but they also do research. And in their latest research, 95% of managers, directors, and executives said that agility, the ability to adapt quickly and easily, is more important in their organization's success now than it was 5 years ago. And of course, this was actually done after the pandemic. So pandemic is in here. So 95% are looking for this word agility and this capacity to be agile. 90% from individual contributors, and in other words, they don't have a management role at all. They're just the lead engineer, or their job is just for them to do that job. They're not managing people. 90% from individual contributors to C-suite said agility is more important to their individual success, their capacity to move throughout the organization and move up or be successful with their clients. It's more important now than it was 5 years ago. Increasingly, employers require it. So if an employer is requiring agility, you need to have a narrative that describes your own agility and examples of it. We have a workshop coming up that we're going to be introducing, so it's free on Friday, where we're going to be talking about another assessment. Just like Workplace is giving you your winning formula, the Agility Showcase actually measures your personal EQ, your personal agility. It also lays out a path for development of your EQ. So having some of this in your pocket is going to be useful. Anything that comes to your mind, Shonda, as we kind of talk about this?
No, I think that's well covered. I think that sounds good.
Okay. So those are the kind of, we're going to be stopping here in a minute, and this is the advantage of coming to the boardroom in person, is because afterwards we have these really rich conversations where we dig into the content that's videotaped. This week we talk about interviewing skills. Next week is negotiating skills. Sometimes they intersect, so you need to be prepared to negotiate during interviewing. The best negotiators prolong the interview place such that the path is already clear to both parties. So the negotiation is just details. But we're going to talk about the negotiation next time. Once again, we're here in between for phone calls, for emails, etc. And so we're going to complete today, and we will stop the recording, and then we will get into our real conversation.